Hello everyone. Today I'm going to do my spring cleaning on these Gretsch Centennial drums. You've seen these before in a video that I did about these drums, I guess last year. So I clean these once a year, and there is some tarnish on the brass. And I'm also going to show you how to clean this natural finish. So in other words, it's not metal like the other cleaning video. This is Carpathian elm veneer, and then on top there's a poly layer, and I'm going to clean that and show you how I do that, as well as the badges, which are, it's easy to kind of mess these badges up, so you have to be careful. So this drum set consists of 5 pieces. We have a 14 by 6.5 inch snare drum. We have a 10-inch tom. We have a 12-inch tom. We have a 14 by 14 floor tom and an 18-inch bass drum. Now I'm also going to change out these Remo heads, these coated ambassadors, with some calf heads. So I'm going to change them out for these earth tone heads. Not the greatest calf head, but they're not bad at all. I have a couple sessions coming up, and I'm going to use these on there and then take them off in a few weeks again and put the plastic back on, because it's going to start getting pretty humid here in North Carolina. So these are made in Brazil, these earth tone heads. The reason I use them on these drums, again, they do sound really good. I love the sound of calf. They're not that expensive, so if one breaks or something happens, it's not the end of the world. I do have some really, really great old leady calfskin heads that I do use with these on special occasions. Now it's not the time to do it because it's, like I said, it's getting a little more humid. So I'll show you those once I put those on. Maybe I'll do another video. So I have 3 of these. Oh, actually, I can show you one of those leady heads because I got one on the snare drum. So you can see that. You see the difference between that and that. I'm not sure if it's calf or what it is, but this is definitely calf skin, and this head is really, really old. I mean, I think this head is probably at least 70 or 80 years old, because they all came off of old leady drums. So anyway, that head stays on that snare drum all the time because I play a lot of brushes on it. And it's pretty thick, so, you know, not much chance of breaking it unless I get really over enthusiastic. So we have the same cleaning supplies we used in the other video. I'm going to use this McGuire's mirror glaze wax, and also I'll use some of this Mother's aluminum. It's for wheels, basically car products that work great. On this brass, I'm going to have to be, it's plated, so I have to be a little bit careful. I don't rub too hard. But it's amazing how fast this stuff starts to oxidize if you don't keep on it, you know. So I probably should start cleaning these twice a year now that I've had them for quite some time. And these are from 1982, I believe, so they're getting up there in age, almost 40 years. So I'm going to probably step up my cleaning process on these, you know, so we don't get any severe problems with the hardware. It's all in pretty good shape, and this brass is developing kind of a patina there, which some people like, but I'm going to try to clean it up a bit. All right, so I'm going to get all these drums off here and just do one at a time. The bass drum will take the longest because I'm switching out this calf head, putting this on the front. And then I have the original head. Wow, that's shiny, I know. This is the head that came with it. All these drums had these gold heads on there originally. They're a little bit blingy, but I'm going to take this calf head, put it on the front, because I have a fiber skin on there now, and put this where it belongs on the back. So we'll be right back, and we'll start working on this. So we'll start with this 14 by 6.5 snare drum, this Gretsch Centennial snare drum. I use this drum a lot. I use it out live. It's one of my favorite snare drums. So it does get a little, I wouldn't say beaten up, but used. It stays in a case. I don't leave it in the car. I don't leave it in cold or hot weather. That's important for some of these drums, and especially for the tarnishing. You want to try to avoid that at all costs. So we're not going to change the head on this drum because, like I said before, this head is is a really great head, and it sounds great right now, so I'm not going to mess with it. So when I clean it, I need to be really, really careful that I don't get some of this on the head, especially a calf head. So what you want to do, as we talked about in the metal cleaning drum, is just put a little bit on the cloth of this cleaner. This is the stuff that smells like bananas. And you put it on the cloth, but in this case, you're going to rub it now so it gets, you know, it doesn't clot up and then gets on the head. And then the first thing I'm going to do is just do this top part really carefully without getting any on the head. And a lot of dirt's coming off, so that's a good sign. This table's a little shaky, so I apologize for the shake we might be getting from this other close-up camera. All right, so lots and lots of dirt came off, and then we'll do just the rim itself. And we're not going to show you all this for all the drums because you'll get bored real quick, but we'll just do this one. I'm sure all of you know how to clean things. But I do want to show you one little thing about the badge and the strainer that's important. I need to buy a better table. All right, we'll let that haze over for a minute. This thing right here, I call this my bumper. So you can see that with the close-up camera. So this is really important if you don't want to mark up your tom. It's going to probably get marked up a little anyway. That's a common thing. They call it snare rash or tom rash or whatever. But you can get these. Canon makes them cheap. There's other companies that make more expensive ones. But this is a real old one, and I totally recommend getting those things. Now, after you leave it on there for about 30 seconds or so, you want to... Actually, we're going to use this. This is that chamois cloth that I showed you in the metal cleaning video, and this is really, really soft. It won't scratch anything. There's no way. And that's really shining up nice. So. And when I change this calf head, I'll take the rim off and do it again. And this time, I'll get the inside of it, so a lot cleaner. But really, it's this is doing wonders. So now, any really stubborn spots, you got to be really careful with any kind of gold-plated or brass rims. You can use this 0000, the finest steel wool, and you can very lightly try to get some of that tarnish off. And it will work, but it also will slightly scratch. If you looked under, you know, a microscope, you would see those scratches. But that's how it gets rid of the dirt. It's abrasive, okay? So this is a rim that I might do that on. I'm going to actually use some on the strainer here, which is really starting to get bad. Normally the strainers are the worst because you're touching them, and the oils or sweat from your hands get into the strainer. Any part of the drum you touch a lot is going to really tarnish quickly. This other side of the snare mechanism has a bad tarnish. See if you can see that on the top. So we're going to address that right now. I'm just going to rub a little steel wool on there just very lightly. And right away that cleaned it all up. See? So a tiny bit of abrasive material is really good to use from time to time, but again, be very careful. One thing you might want to have on hand is a flashlight so you can really shine it on there and see what you're doing, because it might be too late. You know, you might scratch up the drum and not even know it. So if you want to hold that or put it on a stand and do that. Now, like I said in the other video, the other thing I use are these chamois sort of Q-tips, and with these you can really get in there to the grooves and do that kind of thing. So we'll put a little on there, and you spread it around like that, wipe the excess off, and then you're going to basically go at this strainer like that, because you got to get in the grooves and you're going to have to remove it. It's amazing. You see all that dirt that's coming off. All right. And once again, I cleaned these just last year, right at the beginning of the COVID outbreak. That's how I remember. I remember cleaning these. I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do now? That all my gigs have been canceled. Looks, you know, I was thinking, well, I'm going to be cleaning a lot of drums. So, all right. So then we're going to, again, wait about 30 seconds for that to haze over. And we'll talk to you while that's happening. So, as with all Gretsch snare drum mechanisms, this strainer is a little loose. There's really not much you can do about that. They're all like that. I have like 4 Gretsch snare drums, metal ones, as well as this, and they will do that. So don't worry about that too much. I don't know if this will be up by the time we posted this, but I just did a video on a vintage Gene Krupa Radio King drum that has the clamshell strainer. That's the most rickety thing you can imagine. There is a way to fix that I show you in that video. Not sure which one I'm going to get to or post first. So if you've already seen that, then you know what I'm talking about. But this one, there is no way to fix that up. It's just the way the rivet is in there. So it was just made like that. They do that from the beginning, from when they're brand new. Okay, so now I've talked for 30 seconds, and we're going to wipe this off. And it should be like new. Now make sure you use your fingernail to get in those little grooves, because you don't want to leave the wax in there. It won't do any harm, but it'll just look white. And that's looking much better. So you can go nuts with this stuff. You can use I've seen guys use those giant magnifier things where they're, you know, I'm not that, you know, anal retentive about it. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just pretty busy. I don't have a lot of time to do that. But I do like to clean these, like I said, once a year. So then I'll just go over that. And again, get in all those little nooks and crannies, because that's when it'll go bad fast. Now, finally, the strainer, which is the worst possible thing there. So we're going to do a bit of work on this before we go to the next part. I just want to show you how I do this. Once again, spread it out on the cloth so it doesn't clump on there. And then you're going to, I like to go in one direction there when I put it on. And you see the Gretsch logo that's etched into deeply into the strainer. It's real easy to get this cleaner in there, so it's hard to get out. I'm trying to make it so you can see with this other camera. I don't know if that's going to work. And this top of this is starting to oxidize. So we're going to then when you do that, you're going to take this steel wool, and you can take a little off of it, actually an even smaller piece, and you're going to lightly, with the cleaner on there, okay? Sometimes I'll do this, I'll put a little cleaner on there, and I'll do that if it's really bad with the steel wool. Now this is already in bad shape from all the crud on my fingers. I must have turned this thing on and off, God only knows, 1,000 times by now. All these years I've had these. All right, we're not going to do the rest of the strainer like that. And then now we're going to clean this off. It still has a little bit of the cleaner on there. Okay, good. And now we're going to wait for that to dry. In the meantime, I'm going to do the tone knob, which is looking great. That's, by tone knob, I mean muffler knob. I never touched that. So that's all good. And we're going to hit a few more spots on this rim. Overall, though, for being 40 years old, these drums are in amazing shape, pretty much mint condition if I took them apart and really went at it. All right, let's see what we got here. Oh, much better. See if we can give you a view here. I can't see what I'm doing, but you can. Yeah, a lot of dirt came off of there. That's much better. Still a little bit tarnished. I guess that's part of the character at this point. And we'll make sure in that logo that we get in there too. I need to take a closer look at this with the flashlight. Yeah, so this is probably the worst possible, not the worst possible, but the worst spot on the drum. Once again, because you're touching it all the time. Might have to wear gloves like Rudy Van Gelder when he recorded when I start playing drums, you know. All right, and then inside this arm here gets really, really oxidized on all the Gretsch strainers. So that's when you use that Q-tip and you get in there and just try to remove some of that dust and dirt. All right, and if you want to go in there really lightly with the steel wool, and then here again. All right, good. That's much better. So these rims, they are plated for sure. Every once in a while, a little piece of plating will come off on the head. So they're not like, you know, I don't know if they're brass underneath or they're, my guess is they're the just regular Gretsch die-cast heavy hoops that are great. That's just plated, gold plated. I don't think they're brass. And of course, the really cool drum key. That's actually a plated drum key that just, you know, everyone knows that goes in the holder. That's probably their greatest innovation. All right, anyway, I'll show you the bottom of this drum. So these are the original snares, and they are in fantastic condition. Really, really great. And we're gonna just clean this rim real quick, and then we'll move on. I'm not gonna touch the badge. You see the Gretsch badge there? I'm not going to touch that. It looks great. That's always trouble when you try to clean those because all kinds of cleaner gets in there, turns it white. So unless it's really bad, I wouldn't mess with it. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to do is just clean the shell. Now when I clean the shell, I put very, very little on the cloth. Because once again, I keep saying it, I don't want it to build up. And I'll just go in a circle now. All right, and I'll do the whole thing. And at some point, probably when I have time, I'll take this drum completely apart, everything, and give it a massive cleaning. I've never done that with this drum. So this is all fine. Well, all this does is just get some of the dust off. There's not going to be a problem with your finish on these Gretsch drums. Unless it's a wrap, then it might crack, which happens with these drums for sure. And, okay. So I know this is really exciting, watching me clean a drum. But I am remembering things as I'm doing it that I might want to share with you. All right, that's pretty much it for this. One thing I do is I will wait a day or two, and I'll go back, and I'll look at the drum with a flashlight and make sure there's not spots I missed. Right now I'm doing it pretty quick. Normally I'll do it a little slower. But I don't want to spend an hour here with, you know, on camera doing this. So that's common, that you'll miss a spot. And again, I don't think it's going to harm it. It'll just be this white thing. It's not like it's acidic and it's going to eat away at your drum finish. I don't think it is. All right, so there we go. We got a clean Gretsch Centennial snare drum. I'll give you a close look at the badge so you can see it. Now the other drums we're going to do in a minute here, we're going to take the top head off so you can see inside. I'll show you a close view of that. It's really a standard Gretsch, old Gretsch shell, the Jasper shells. All right, we'll be back. So we're going to start with this 10-inch tom. And the first thing we're going to do is just take off the head. Oops. I usually use this pillow under this, or these, so I can push down on it without pushing down on the table. And once again, I always loosen these. This drum has 5 tension rods, 5 lugs. And then make sure it's in reverse. Now these do have these brass tension rods, and I did not change those. It came like that. All right, let's put this here like that. And it's kind of, you know, this is after, I play these drums a lot. This is after around 6 months. So we'll probably discard this head. It's worn out. All right, so that's the inside, and we're gonna grab the camera here and give you a tour, but you might be able to see that. So these are the Jasper shells. Those of you who are not familiar with these, they're very thin. And let's see here. Okay, there we go. So you see this is the Gretsch badge for the Centennial. It says set number 47. So this was they made, I don't think they ever got to 100. They were supposed to, but I'm not sure they did. And, you know, then it's labeled 2 of 5. So these drums are very rare, and I don't think they made another jazz kit. Please let me know if someone out there has one, because I've never seen another one. I'd love to know. Anyway, all these shells were pretty much the same, and they were, you know, all throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And you see how thin. They're all in good shape. Bearing edges on these are very good. Now, I'm not sure these were made in South Carolina, but I think they were. At that point, Baldwin had owned them, and they were going, you know, if you watch my Centennial video, I talk about it. But there were some issues with the company. It was being sold and bought, and people were leaving. But this was the whole celebration year. All right, and I'll give you a close-up of some of this hardware. Hopefully you can see that. That's the heavy tom mount. Once again, the logo. The badge, I mean. All right. So we're going to turn this back around. Straighten it out. So one thing I do, I showed you when I did my snare drum videos, I'll take a little bit of beeswax and put it around the drum. Now I did it last time, so I'm not going to do it this time, but I'm going to clean it and make sure it's okay. That just helps the calf head sit better. And no dirt ever comes off like this. It's not really dirty. But once the head's off, you can do some cleaning pretty easily because you're not worried about those tension rods. So I'm going to do that real quick. So now I'll grab the head. So I've had these heads on there many times before. These are my secondary heads, like I said. And, you know, the earth tone heads, they're not bad at all. They're probably, I guess, maybe $40 each. I believe they're made in Brazil still. So, you know, I mean, as far as calf heads go, they do have a metal rim, which is great. You know, I like those. So it's not the worst deal in the world. But there are better choices as far as sound. But these work just fine. And I do like them more than I do the plastic heads. Although the Remo skin tone heads are really a close second. They're great. I love those. All right, let's see here. I'm trying to find, there it is. Okay, I have marked my rims. So just, these drums are really round, but some drums aren't actually perfectly round. So I always mark my rims with a Sharpie, and I line them up. The first time I change the heads, I do that because who knows how long they were sitting, and sometimes the drum conforms to that when they're brand new. Normally, any kind of ply drum doesn't have that problem. Plywood is very stable, but the problem is when you get a steam bent drum, like the old Radio Kings, they will move. And, you know, I've seen some that were starting to resemble an oval in there, and then you can't get the heads on, and then you got a real problem. So I always mark those drums, like I said. All right, and then finger tighten, like we always talk about. Now these calf heads have tension already because I keep them very, very dry. So, in other words, they're in a room that's heated. It's not a kiln, but it's fairly dry. We're going to go around. And I do this by feel once again. And then what I'll do is I'll press down on it to seat it without breaking my table. And I do this on this pillow, okay? And I'm really pressing hard, so. Okay, and then I'll do it again, just very lightly. And then I'll start going around in a star tuning. But I'll check my tension first. Good. All right, so now we're going to do 2. Now, I use several different tunings with this kit. This kit tunes up really high and really low, so it's one of the things I love about it, because the shells are so thin. And normally Gretsch drums are pretty dry sounding. Tama has really thin shells too. I have a Bobinga kit that has the same thin shells as these as far as how thick they are. But, you know, I would say they're probably maybe 3/16 or 1/4 inch. Very, very thin. But they ring forever, so go figure. Yeah. And we're going to play these for you by the end of the video. I'll set up the drums. And for the next maybe 10 or so videos I'm going to do, they're going to be on these drums. All right, so that's working. And I'll just leave it. I'll leave it low for a while, let it get settled in there, and then I'll clean the rest of the drum. So that's basically what I'm going to do now with all these. And the next clip you'll see, I'll be back with the bass drum because I do want to show you the inside of that. And also I'm going to change that calf head out. So we'll see you in a minute. Okay, so I've done all the rest of the drums, changed the heads, and now I'm up to this bass drum. I've taken all the hardware off and cleaning that. But I just wanted to show you something that's common with calf heads. I'm going to show you the inside of this drum real quick so you can see it. It's 18 by 14. And then this calf head is an old Ludwig and Ludwig. So you can see that on this other camera. And it's these are the best calf heads, that old calf heads, in other words, that you can get. The old Leedies, the old Ludwigs and Ludwigs. I have a collection of these. They're very, very old, anywhere from the 30s, 40s, 50s. And the problem with these heads is they have wood hoops. And what happens with the wood hoops, and I've said this in my other videos, is that they change shape over time. So if you put them on a drum and they're on there, like this one's been on here for a year, they will literally conform to the drum because the calf is raising and lowering and it's moving. And sometimes it gets tight and that hoop goes along with it. It actually moves the shape or changes the shape of the hoop. So inevitably what happens is this gets stuck on there. So I'm going to show you how to get that off now. You got to do it very carefully or you will split the wood hoop. And then you got to retuck the head, which is a pain in the neck. We'll do that in another video. You have to use I use a kid's swimming pool to do it. These heads and timpani heads are too big to do in a bathtub. So you need a pool, literally, to do them. So anyway, that's why the metal hoops are better. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stand up. My head will disappear for a minute. And I'm going to show you how I do this. So you turn the drum around and you put one hand on the other side and then you put the head against your body and then you pull slightly. And then what you got to do is do that all the way around. Do not hit it with a rubber mallet. I've seen people do that. Do not pull one end. You have to do it evenly. Otherwise you will split that hoop. I've done it, so I've learned the hard way. This is what I'm doing now. It's on there. Okay. And you just have to keep rotating it and going around, and just about 1/8 of an inch at a time, and it will come off. You just got to be very careful. Ah, there it goes. Okay, so you see here's the head. Very, very light, these heads, and this is a thin one. Now, since this is such a thin head, and I'm putting this on the beater side of the drum now instead of the back where it was, I'm going to put some of this moleskin on there. All right, old people like me use it for our feet when we get problems. Anyway, this stuff is great. You can get it at the drugstore. I've used it for years. You know, it's cheap, and you can get a bunch of these out of one. So you can spend a bunch of money for bass drum, special pads and stuff, but this is way cheaper, and it works just as well. It also will muffle the head just slightly, which is good. So I don't really use any external muffling. So I'll put that on once I measure the beater. With an 18, it's going to be probably around there. Okay? And don't play it really hard with a wood beater or anything. It has to be either a kind of a fuzzy beater or hard felt at the hardest. But I use kind of a fuzzy beater for this. All right, so put this down. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch the heads, put them on, and then show you how I tune this up, because I have gotten some questions about tuning bass drums. All right, after much effort, I was able to get this head, this front head on. It was indeed warped. The shell's fine. I checked that out. It's just the head gets like that because of the wood hoops. So I'm going to show you how I do this and how I make sure now, since it's so tight, that we get an even tension. So one thing we've talked about doing is putting lug lube in these lugs, and we're going to do that now. And that's important because you want to keep those lugs operating smoothly. The chance of finding a gold-plated Gretsch lug that works with this is probably 0 at this point, unless you get another set like this and get it off of that. So we got to be real careful with these. And they do bend because they are thin. All right, and then we'll take the hoop. Now these hoops are very fragile, and the finish they used on here wasn't great. So you see there's some rash from the bass drum pedal. That just is going to happen. So we'll put it on there just like it was, and that fits good now. Okay, I reversed the hoops in case they're a little bit out of round. The hoops will get out of round with the head. That it's not a problem. This is working great. So then we're just going to go and tighten these now. You can't use any kind of screw gun, obviously. And some are going to be a little more difficult than others to get on there. So you got to fight with it a little, okay? And so it's seated because, again, it's warped. The head is. And make sure all these lugs are straight. I mean, the tension rods. It's going to want to pop up, so I'm putting some tension on it. So I do these first two, and then I do the bottom two, like that. All right? Because what the danger is that the tension's not going to be even all around the drum, since the head is not round anymore. And we're going to get it back round, or as round as we can get it with this drum. And so I'll put a good bit of tension on these two. This rim, this wood hoop, is not in great shape after all these years. All right, and then I'm going to put some tension, like I said, on these. And that's going to hold it while I put the other in, because, and I'm not hitting it real hard now, so you don't want to do that, but you just want to make sure it's seated in there. Otherwise, you'll tune it up, and then a week later, it won't have any tension because all of a sudden, it'll snap back to being in round. And then you'll have to take the toms off, take the bass drum off. It's a pain in the neck. So this is the way to do it. I've learned over lots of years. See how easy these are going on now, and you see how difficult the first two were? So that's why we do it that way. So now we're seated. particular tension rod is a little bit warped. Okay, last one. Now I'm going to go over there in a minute and grab a mallet, because that's what I use to tune this. Doesn't have to be a big mallet, just something where you can hear pitch. All right, and then I'm just going to finger tighten it, each one, and we should have a tone. Perfect. All right, now let's talk about tuning this thing. Let me wipe off some of this residue here. You don't have to put the legs on yet. These are these old Gretsch legs. So we're just going to tune like this. Let me grab a mallet. Okay, so this is just a hard timpani mallet. It doesn't need to be anything special. I'm going to hit this pretty lightly so I don't distort the mics, because they're pretty hot right now so you can hear me talking. The first thing I'm going to do is get both heads in roughly the same area tuning-wise. So what we'll do is we'll just hold it like this and just tune it all the way around. I'm not doing any kind of star tuning right now. I'm just getting tension on it. So we're going for a pitch. Okay. And I'll give you that on the piano here. I got a piano over here. So anywhere between an A flat and an A is where I like to start. I tune my snare drums to an A, so it's normally an octave below the snare. Let me tilt this up. Good. All right, and then we'll turn it around. And we'll do the same thing with the other head. Try to tune it exactly the same. It's going to have a lot more tone, though, because it's a calf head. Now, what you want to do, kind of like tuning a timpani, you want to go all the way around on the edge. And I'm going to get this as close as I can before I do the final tuning. And one thing to remember is that you tune this one up, this one gets affected. They all get affected by each other. You could use a drum dial for this, but it doesn't work great. All right. You could use the tune bot as well, but again, I like doing it by ear. I've been doing it for a long time. So this is low here. High. Low. Now we're getting there. Still a little low. I'm going to distort the mics. Good. It's a different timbre. Calf has a different kind of thing than a plastic head. Much different, as you just heard. Now I'm going to bring it up, and I am going to do this. Okay. Another thing to remember is that calf is not like a plastic head where the whole head is the same thickness. So different parts of the head are different. My teacher at Manhattan School of Music, Fred Hinger, we used to use calf heads. when I went to his house for lessons. He had calf heads on his drums. And he taught me about the sweet spot on these heads. And he actually invented timpani that you could turn to find the best part of the head, like a, like a mason jar, top of a mason jar, which is great. You could rotate the whole drum. And he taught me most of what I know about calf heads, because he would tuck them and he showed me how to do that. And we always used calf heads. That's when I really fell in love with them. That and watching Mel Lewis at the Village Vanguard, because he used calf sometimes. All right, that's good. So I think we're in business. Now finally, once I get on the kit, I will put this thing on here so I don't break the head. And this head's gonna, I've decided I'm just gonna leave it on there forever. Normally with a bass drum, it's not gonna get too high to break, or it could get low, but it won't break if it's low. And I won't break through it if I used to write beater, as opposed to tom heads, where if you're hitting them hard with a drumstick, which has a tip, that'll go right through a head. Where a bass drum beater, it's a big round circle. It's a lot harder to break a head that way, although I'm sure some of you have done it. Okay. All right, so the next thing you'll see is the setup, and I'll play a little for you, so stand by. So here we are at the drum set. I have the heads on. I have the bass drum heads on. I set up my cymbals. These are all the old Ks. This is an 18 from the 1960s. This is a 21 from the 1940s. This is a Paiste, actually. They're not all Ks. This is a old Paiste swish. It's a traditional swish. It's a 22-inch. This is a 16-inch K from the 60s. And these hi-hats are Ks from the 50s. So you've seen these if you watch my old K video. It's a couple years ago. So that's the setup that I use, and the calf heads sound great. They're expecting some rain tonight, so I fully expect to wake up tomorrow and have these about 2 steps lower. And that's what you have to deal with calf heads. Every day you have to tune them. But I'm used to that because I play a lot of timpani. And when you do that with an orchestra or wherever, in school or wherever you are, you're always having the tune. Every day you clear the drums. And so it's not a big deal, but it's a lot more maintenance than it is for plastic heads. And the snare drum, when it's on, always sounds good, this drum. So there's not a lot of snare buzz on these toms. It's not too bad. You can cut down on some of that if you loosen the lugs nearest to the snares under the head, or you can sometimes tighten them and get rid of it too. Depends if there's snare beds. So if there's a snare bed in the drum, you can tighten it some. You can try that. With the metal drums that don't have snare beds, you can loosen it. So, try to do that. With this particular drum here, I tightened it a little, and I'm getting a little less snare buzz. It's not a big deal. I don't mind it for jazz. It's part of the kit. It's part of the sound of the kit. But the tuning matters. Everything is sympathetic. If I turn the snares off, you can hear the tuning. So it's very dry. These drums are pretty dry. Gretsch drums are known for that. And the calf heads give it a lot of warmth, I think. The tone is very pure. If I use a mallet, yeah, I'm liking these heads a lot, actually. Last time I put them on, they didn't sound as good, so I must have broken them in. So I'll just play a little. Oh, actually, before I do that, I forgot. Let's talk about the bass drum real quick, because I've gotten a lot of questions about this, how I tune my bass drum, and I showed you some just a minute ago. But this is what I consider sort of a high tuning. I never go for that way high tuning some folks use. I've noticed when I do that, I get some funny looks over all these years. Not really anymore because I'm kind of, older, but when I was younger and I tuned my bass drum up high, some of the bass players would look at me funny because if you tune it to a certain note and they're playing, it interferes with what they're doing. So I caught on to that when I was, in my 20s, and I stopped doing that. And I started tuning it a little bit lower just to stay out of their, range. Of course, they play low, but a lot of times they'll move up on the, pitch-wise and play real high sometimes. And then if you start doing that, it's like a battle. So I tend to tune my bass drum a little lower. I like it to ring, though, so that's what I like. So. Just like another drum. Now, if you want to muffle that, and I've showed you this before in some of my other jazz videos, you can use a muffler like this. Doesn't have to be this one. This is that Gary Chaffee muffler. And if I put this on, it clamps to the, it's tricky to get on there, especially on an 18. So it'll clamp to the actual drum rim, and that's what you get. So you hear the difference. So that's what you get. I like it open, so I'm going to leave it open for now. And I'll listen back. This is just a test of what they sound like. So I'm going to record some videos on these, and I'll listen back. If I think it needs to be dried up, I'll put the muffling on just slightly. And the good thing about this muffler, I showed you this in another video, you can do that so you can get it off the head some. It's great. I wish they still made these. They don't, I found out. I have 2 of them. I should have bought 10. Oh well, when something great like this comes out, my advice is buy a lot of them because it's going to disappear pretty much. All right, I'll just play a little and have some fun, and then we'll see you tomorrow.